And as a performer, I think especially a comedian, our journey has always been about, in the beginning, we're doing it so much for us. We want the laughter. We want to feel good. And then that crossover, and that's when a comedian really sort of takes off, when they don't need anything from the audience, that it's all for the audience.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators Podcast. I'm Seth Deckman, your Keynote Curator. And today we're talking about the power of connection through laughter. Our guest today is Scott Bloom. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Seth.
You are very, very welcome. I'm excited for this conversation because I know, you have mastered that intersection between business and humor. Decades experience as an MC and a keynote speaker for some of the world's biggest brands. I want to get your sense of when you work with meeting professionals and the surprise that you must get when humor and laughter are woven into your work, because there is a message that sustains everything underneath. But they always come back to you. From what I've heard and what I've seen is like there's a refreshing surprise or something unexpected about that. That must be so, heartening for you.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I feel an important role, whether I'm emceeing or keynoting, is you need to get the audience engaged. And what's a great way of doing that is obviously through laughter, getting people to laugh. And by laughing, they're having a shared experience. Everyone's involved. And I used to do stand-up back in the early, from like the late 80s up until 2000. And I used to do comedy at night, 8 p.m. And then I started moving into the corporate world and doing it at 8 a.m. It's a different experience. But what's great about what I really enjoy about doing is that they're not expecting that they're going to come to this meeting and laugh. And so That's a surprise. And that allows me to really help the organizers have a better event, because I'm shifting the tone right from the beginning. It's not going to be the same old boring meeting. There's actually going to be some fun. They're going to be laughing. They're going to feel some connection with each other. And my job as an MC, when I'm emceeing, is to connect the people in the audience to what's going on stage. And so one of the net effects of having me there, let's say as an MC, is that the presenters start to loosen up. They see that the audience, can appreciate some jokes here and there. So they tend to be looser. They tend to be funnier. The audience, I mean, it's the same reason they have a comedian warm up, let's say at a concert or, a performer there. It's to get people laughing, getting them awake, getting them energized, getting them connected to what's going on stage. And that brings a lot of joy to me that I'm, of service to the actual meeting.
Yeah. Our audience, Scott, you may know, many are meeting professionals, marketers, event producers, but some are business owners and people from all industries. And, I want to clarify one thing. They're incredibly smart. They're incredibly aware. They're incredibly dialed in. But for those that don't know, the 80s and 90s that Scott referred to, that was last century. So, he's talking about, a different era, fossils, if you will.
But I was working back in the 1900s. Yes.
Exactly. Way back.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, it's not laughter for laughter's sake or humor for humor's sake or just being whimsical to lighten up the mood. There is I use the word sustain. There is a message. There is content. There is a learnings, if you will. Talk about that blend and how you make that blend.
Well, one of the things I talk about in my keynote is building relationships and making connections, and that through building relationships, you want to have an emotional connection. You want to one of the things I talk about is just shifting your mindset from what can you get from that person to what can you give to that person. And as a performer, I think especially a comedian, our journey has always been about, in the beginning, we're doing it so much for us. We want the laughter. We want to feel good. And then that crossover, and that's when a comedian really sort of takes off, when they don't need anything from the audience, that it's all for the audience. And so I let them, through the comedy and through what I'm talking about, they can experience what it's
Yeah.
like when someone's doing something for them, when they make it about them. So all the humor that I do is all customized to them, about their business. So they also see, hey, not only do I want to make an effort to emotionally connect with someone, but people can tell when you're focused on them and not focused on yourself. So that gets transmitted through the bits I'm doing, through the comedy, and I'm building a relationship. You have to feel when you're laughing, you feel connected to the person who's making you laugh, and that's just one way. And I talk about that. That's just one way of creating an emotional, reaction or emotional connection. It could be through being of service. It could be through appreciation or gratitude. The point is to do something for someone else and not make
Yeah.
it about yourself.
Yeah. Well, it's where the attention is. And,
Mhm.
again, I just want to speak to our subscribers and viewers. Thank you for coming back. And for the first timers, we appreciate it. Love us, like us, comment. But, what Scott just referred to, and, this is specifically for our audience, is where the attention is. And so many times I've seen keynote speakers who are excellent. They have great content, authors, great message. But the attention is on them, and their content might be so good or so current, or somebody famous played them in a movie about their life story, that the fact that it's about them gets overshadowed by the bigness of the story or whatnot. But what Scott's talking about is really the next level of connecting, because if you're out there and the attention is on the audience and what you can give them and what you can provide, Scott, you're amazing and everything, but sometimes you just disappear. And the lesson, the humor, that energy, that lightheartedness, the disarming, the softening the ground for the rest of the day is given. And you're gone as a personality or something to be admired. And that's decades of experience. I'm blowing smoke up, what, but it's an important distinction for our audience to know.
Yeah, 100%. And, just me sort of modeling that, it's something that they can model themselves. I'm trying to get them to lighten up, to get out of their head. And, when you have an emotional response to something, it's more visceral, it's less cerebral. So I'm also talking about getting out of your head so that the one of the net effects of me being there as an opening keynote or an MC is that I see a shift in the energy of the meeting. People are a lot
Yeah.
more open to talk to each other, to have fun with each other, to lighten up. It's a business meeting, but at the end of the day, you want to enjoy being there. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes people forget that you have to make an experience where people want to be there, they're having a good time, and they want to come back.
And that's what, again, I'm the below the smoke analogy, but that's why people love working with you, because you're having fun and you can be serious, but you don't have to be boring. And you can be serious and still smile and still have, a little bit of a laugh, and you don't lose the plot, so to speak. And the fun that you have is infectious, which leads me into something that I know you love talking about. I know your book from 6 years ago, faux the faux book covers from 2019, was a lot of fun for you, and it's just a source of joy and endless laughter. But I want to talk about something you're working on right now, and correct me if I don't get it exactly right. It's the Atomic Miracle Morning, the not so obvious quantum paradox guaranteed to transform your life. And it's a little bit of a play on a couple of publications and authors and thought leaders that are out there. Why don't you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, so just to give some context, the book came out. My first book came out called "You Can Judge a Book by Its Cover," which was a series of faux book covers parodying personal and professional development, with each book cover having a synopsis as if it was real. And a lot of times when I would post these on LinkedIn, they're written so realistic,
Convincingly, right?
convincingly that people think, "Oh, this could be a real book." So I had the book came out, and then I started on LinkedIn creating new book covers. It was a way to showcase my brand, my comedy. People enjoyed it. Became a really fun interactive experience because I'd put something funny, and then in the comments, people would put their funny comments, and I would go back with them. So that was a lot of fun. So I recently came up with this mashup, which is the mashup of The Morning Miracle by Hal Elrod and Atomic Habits by James Clear. So I came up with the Atomic Morning Miracle. And what's funny about it is that as I was writing this, and the secret to this whole thing in the parentheses, the way you transform your life is to wake up 2 hours before you go to sleep. Makes perfect sense.
It's totally, it just crystallized for me. I mean, so before you go to bed, you're already up 2 hours beforehand. Okay, I'm tracking.
But I'll come full circle in a moment. And a lot of the wisdom that came out of the book. So I took it from a cover and I'm like, this would make a great parody book. So I started writing the parody book. But as I wrote some more, I realized, oh, there's some truths in this sort of quantum consciousness, this idea that two things can exist at one time, that the idea that reality is created when you, in a quantum field, at a quantum level, when you put your attention towards something. We're talking about attention. And I realized, oh, there's some life lessons. So I actually wrote some practical lessons. And so now, one of the subtitles on the book is, where parody collides with practical wisdom. And it's a hybrid of a humor book with some self-help, sort of spiritual ideas. And just like my comedy, just like my writing, just like my keynoting and emceeing, there you get drawn in through the humor, but you come out learning something.
That's right.
And so it's definitely in line with my style of how I present my humor. Someone described it as sort of like a Trojan horse. You're coming in for the humor, but you're going to come out the other end transformed. And that's what I do with everything I do. And I'm very excited. Now, the other thing about this is I wrote this whole thing with do you remember Quantum Leap from the from the 1900s? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell starred in it. And in the original parody cover, I had them doing the forward. Then I spelled it FUXWORD. They did the forward. But then when I was writing this real book, I realized, oh, maybe I could let me get Scott Bakula to be part of this. So when my publisher told me I originally had the parody chapters, then the exercises, they said, well, why don't you integrate them so that they can get a little of this? And I realized I needed a tour guide, a quantum tour guide.
Right.
So I wrote Scott Bakula into the book. And every so often when you go for a switch from a parody chapter to an exercise, we have these spectacular Bakula faculas. FAQs, frequently asked quantums. And he sort of guides you through, oh, you must be feeling this right now. Well, this is where we're going to take it. And so I wrote this whole book with Scott Bakula in mind, but I can't publish it until I get Scott Bakula to sign up for it. But I'm using techniques from the book to visualize and create this meeting. And where we are of the date of the recording, his publicist has the manuscript. I got it through a friend of mine who co-created a show that Scott Bakula starred in. As of now, from what I hear, the publicist is intrigued, and my friend's trying to get me a meeting with him and Scott Bakula. It's very exciting and very weird. And the story of how I got Scott Bakula is the sort of marketing of this book. This is what I did from the book, and this is what happened.
Right. And the Trojan horse is the best way to face it, because it's like you're creating an opening, an unexpected opening to access a little bit more heady, a little bit more of these life lessons, like you said, spiritual even. I mean, there's the elegant universe, there's power versus force. There's a whole litany of writings, publications, amazing authors and thinkers that are a little bit more dry, a little bit more academic, if you will, that talk about these quantum ideas, energy, intention, where your focus is, but you're bringing it to the everyman. And
yes,
so cool.
And what's fun is his character, at some point, he questions. We have a section at the end where we talk about the book. Scott sits down with Scott, a conversation on reality, consciousness, and who's really in charge. And in this dialogue back and forth, in fact, at the beginning, when he does first show up, he says, "Hey, it's me. It's the real Scott Bakula. I bet you didn't expect to see me here." And he goes, "You're not smiling? You don't think it's cool that the author got me into this book?" And he goes on, tells about what's going to happen, but at a certain point, he says, "Hey, I got to stop for a second. I really kind of feel like you don't think I'm who I am. I'll tell you what. I'm going to put my personal private mobile number here. Just call, leave a message." So he does that. Later in the book, he actually addresses some of the voicemail messages as if, we're in quantum time. He doesn't know how it's happening. And so
Right.
there's fun moments there. At the
Yeah.
very end, he even questions whether he's real. Has he been saying all this, or have I been putting all the words in his mouth? And I tell him in a quantum way, it's both. That's the whole cool thing about quantum consciousness. It's two things happening at once.
You are here and you've already woken up 2 hours ago.
Well, you know what? This is what's funny is at the end, we realize it's not really literally waking up before 5 a.m. to be productive. It's waking up to this consciousness that you are one with something greater than you, that you have a lot more power in this universe, that life is being done for you. So it's a waking up of consciousness. And I actually stumbled on that realization halfway through the book. I thought it was just a joke line. And then I'm like, oh, you're actually waking up to a new way of looking at life.
It's, I could go down, I wouldn't even call it a rabbit hole, just another lane there where I'm going to drop a seed and maybe we'll come back to it. But are you familiar with the telepathy tapes?
I am not.
Okay, put a bookmark there and we'll come back to that because it talks about waking up into consciousness and that there is a shared consciousness and we're not all on the same plane. And maybe this will be the sequel to that book, but it is a whole fascinating world of intention and energy and where you put your focus and even a spirituality to it. It's really cool. I just want to come back to our viewers, for the planners who are listening. This is an exact synthesis of Scott's originality and his creativity in living color and what he brings to these events, not just with keynotes or MCs, both, but in the pre-planning. You're even going to, hang out during the event and post. You'll make yourself available for whatever a client would need. Here's my question. An event needs an MC, but they don't have all the resources, which is code for either the budget or a clear way of utilizing the MC. Walk us through that a little bit of, not every event uses MCs, Scott, right? And so some are either foreign to it or they don't really know how to do it or the value of it.
Yeah. I think, I've been in this business for a long time, and I've seen the progression of people getting an understanding of the value of having an MC. I on my podcast, I speak to MCs all the time. And in the beginning, it was a little frustrating, because people just didn't understand why we bring an outside person to lead our meeting. We're going to have our VP of sales, our VP of marketing. If it's an association, we'll have one of the board directors. But people are realizing now you're trying to create an experience for your audience. You're trying to create, at some level, an event, a production, and not having a professional in that role. There's a reason they have a professional at any of the awards programs, at any show, to help not only steer the session, but also to connect everything that's going on. And also to have that bridge between what's going on stage and what's going on with the audience. So I'm constantly trying to, educate event organizers the value of having an MC. And yes, it's usually the last thing they think of. And I would say majority of meetings don't have MCs, and they're really missing something there, especially of these associations. And a great way to solve it is you got $35,000 for your MC for your keynote, and the $35,000 keynotes are not going to want to hear this. Get yourself a $20,000 keynote. Get yourself a $25,000 keynote, and use that extra money. Do you want that money going for just 1 hour in the meeting, or do you want to take that money and put it over 2-3 days where you can get some real value? So I constantly tell people that there's ways of finding it in the budget, and that it is essential at some way to really help guide that audience through those 2-3 day experiences. Without an MC, It's just, a blip, you have a meeting, they leave. A blip, you have a meeting, they leave. You want to have some continuity and you want your audience to really be engaged and really want to be there. And I think an MC really helps that.
Yeah, I mean, many meeting professionals have to wear so many different hats, right? I call it the chief cook and the bottle washer. And some have strengths in certain realms, whether it's the food and beveraging, the negotiation of the hotel, all different aspects of the transportation, the content and messaging. But the actual production, when you bring in an MC, and in your case, you're both. Some MCs have a little bit more strength on the MC side and are a little bit less strong on the keynote side. I think you strike that balance. But what I want to emphasize to our audience is that, when you bring in an MC, the importance of it is that you have an additional professional, experienced person who's going to help in the development and the production of the show flow, and where some pitfalls might happen or where something needs to be beefed up or trimmed down a little bit. Talk about maybe an anecdote where you've seen something, you've been able to intervene and, avoid a big risk or, build something that was kind of sinking.
Yeah, I mean, at some level, we're also sort of an event partner. We're there. We've done so many meetings. We know what works, what doesn't. And so when I come into the process, I'm there to say, "Hey, it's always great to have me open up the session. I'll get them involved. I'll get them engaged. I'll set up what's going to happen during that day and start that relationship right there." A lot of times they don't sort of see, hey, you just had two really back-to-back heavy things. Let me come out and do a quick little 5-minute bit right there, just to, just as a palate cleanser, just to get them a little bit more relaxed and ready for the next presenter. I host a lot of award programs. There is where my years of doing this is essential, because a lot of times, whether they've done it before, they might not have done it always correctly. Or maybe it's the first time they're having an MC. So I'm always there to say, hey, this is what would work best. And one of the things I tell them is a lot of times they want to just, I understand some of these award programs could go long, and there's a place where you definitely have to have MC, just because people are expecting that kind of thing at an award show.
Yeah.
And they can get long. And even if it's, everything from reading names, I know how to keep that rhythm going. But I'll also tell them is you don't want to start anything while people are buried in their food or buried in their salad. So I always say, if I'm going to open up the program, maybe your CEO or someone, whoever's leading that meeting comes out at first, welcomes everyone. Hey, we're just about to get started. Enjoy your first course. We'll come back soon after that. So just to let them know, you can't really be performing or giving out awards while people are buried in. And then the same thing goes with, if you have the longer part of the awards program, let's do it after dinner. You can't do it through the dinner. No one's listening.
Right.
And especially if you bring in a professional who's going to be performing, no one wants to be performing while their heads are buried in click clacking, a room full of 1,200 people. People in the back feel like, hey, I'm not even part of this. I can talk, and it gets a little, noisy. So I'm there to help with those pitfalls. And as you said, you have someone professional there. So if anything goes wrong, someone doesn't show up, we can cover that, that time.
Yeah, it's so important. The meeting professional, they wear all these hats, the event producer, the event marketer, and there's constraints, right? There's budgets, there's time, there's reality. Like you said, they have to eat, or the schedule, there's dinner has been provided or promised or put on the agenda. And sometimes it feels that either the hotel, the conference center, the caterer is dictating, or that there's constraints on the construction of the timeline, that whether it's the show, the MC, a keynote, they have to kind of fit in and adapt there. And often I think it's the other way around. To make a remarkable meeting is bringing in somebody like you and saying, okay, let's stop the train. Let's move dinner up a half an hour. Let's shorten the dessert and the coffee service by even 10 minutes. You gain a little bit more time, and you have some space to really breathe some life into the room and finish with a bang, which is a celebration, whether it's awards or a closing session or whatnot. And, I'm starting to see that, more and more, where people are not as tied into the vendor and there's a lot of rules and regulations around times that things can happen. Are you seeing that at all from your experience?
I think they're getting a little bit more adaptable and realizing, hey, if you talk to them in advance, see, their communication is real important to get in touch with the food and beverage manager or whoever's handling that dinner that night to let them know this is what we want to do. We do want to take a break between the salads and the entrees because we just want to get a few awards there. If they communicate, that can actually definitely be done. Sometimes the communication doesn't happen and you have a plan and people weren't notified and all of a sudden you're going into something. And I think I've experienced that before and, it kind of throws everyone off in that moment. So I think communication is real important.
All right, let's turn the corner here. Let's just talk curveballs
Okay.
with respect and love to everybody. You've been doing this a really long time. I'm sure you've seen the sea of humanity from the stage and from the back of the room. What are some of the memorable moments where a curveball was thrown your way, where you've either learned something or it was something that our audience could learn from themselves?
Well, I've had, like most people, some weird disaster thing happen in the audience, whether it's someone having a medical issue, we've had to, deal with that. And I think that's one thing that the meeting professionals should understand that, this is a live show. Anything can happen. Somebody doesn't show up backstage and that's happened before where someone, a speaker's supposed to be down there and they're
Right.
not down there. And that's where I have to sort of go out there and vamp for a little while. I have a lot of material. I have a lot of comedy material, so I could always jump into something. And that's important. And I've had situations where, just something didn't go as well as they planned. So just even if someone was trying to do something, in their presentation and it kind of fell, you could kind of feel the energy really drop. To be able to go there and deal with it tactfully, you don't want to you don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but be able to go in there and sort of acknowledge what's happening and shift once again the energy. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
job of the MC is really to constantly be maintaining that energy of the room, keeping it up, keeping everyone, connected and engaged.
Right. But it's up, but it's not full all the time, right? There's a balance of when you got to really turn it up and bring it down. No?
Yeah, yes. I mean, there's sometimes, I've had this situation where we've just had sort of a memoriam of some sort. And luckily, if you're just in the moment, you're going to feel it. So I think that helps also with that transition. If you have an
Sure.
MC who's not going to ignore what's actually happening and also just be emotionally open so you're affected by it. It could have been a video that just played, might not have been a memoriam, it might have been some there was some cure for some drug and we had some sort of emotional experience to acknowledge it. There could have been people crying in the audience, and if you're taken by that moment in the same way the audience, you're sort of reflecting a lot of what's going on in the audience. An MC is kind of an audience advocate. We're asking those questions. We're feeling what they're feeling. We're taking them on that journey that we feel that they want to go on. So yes, if there's a moment that's serious in a moment, you have to play that sort of serious moment and authentically. And
Yeah.
I think that's you mentioned earlier about having fun up on stage. One of the things that I've learned in my journey of performing and keynoting is when you get to that place where talk about a quantum paradox, two things can exist at one time. You could be reading the room and not relying on the room. So
Hmm.
I know what's going on, but I'm not going to determine whether I'm doing well based on how they're feeling. And it might sound a little arrogant, like, what do you mean? And what if they're not laughing? I've been in the audience recently, like at a conference. I was at the NSA conference this year, and I love being an audience member because a lot of keynotes don't realize that an audience member might be enjoying your presentation, but no noise is coming out of their face.
Right.
You know what I'm
You
saying?
know, it's so funny you say that because from the back of the room, if I go to a lot of events. I enjoy going to events. I learn. I like to be there and serve, and I'm the extra set of hands. I'll drive. I'll plug in a mic. I'll do hair and makeup, not my own, but others.
Right.
Um, But really, you'll see sometimes meeting professionals that hire a speaker and they're like on every bated breath of the audience. Did they like that? Did they not like that? And it's a little bit of a bigger, more ample, wider berth of understanding it. And at the same tone, I tell them, look, not only wait for the evaluations, but let's get some more anecdotal, take everything with a grain of salt. It could be a first time attendee. It could be somebody who's jaded. It could be somebody who's new in the industry, been there for a long. You have to kind of get your whole scope of what we would call generally feedback or instant kind of reaction. But to your point, Scott, I say the same thing to speakers. Don't be sucked in by that person in the front row who's like the groupie. And at the inverse, don't be turned off by the person with their arms across, folded across their chest, right?
No,
It's
that's stand up 101 is not to be focused on one person, but I'm even expanding it more. It's kind of what you were just speaking about, which is, oh, this one thing I always said got a big laugh and it didn't get the same laugh. You're doing the same thing. There's just so much wiggle room on how you're going to do what you're doing. The audience is a factor. As you said, they first time they've been to a conference, they're overwhelmed. Or, where this came in the course of the 3 days, you're the closing keynote and everyone wants to get out of there. It's really important. This is a message for speakers and anyone who's doing any bit of comedy is that you have to believe in yourself. What the audience is enjoying is you having a good time on stage. That is contagious. And so as long as you're having fun up there, and once again, it's that quantum paradox. You're not ignoring the audience. You're just not determining how well you're doing based on these weird reactions that you might expect to get, which is, could be anything from laughter or, I'm interested in when people are singing. You can maybe hear at the end during the applause, oh, they really liked it. But while they're singing, there's no cues coming back and forth. And I think for the speaker or the comedic speaker, you need to sort of just trust yourself, know you're doing well.
The two words you said, belief and trust, right there. And you can't, I'm going to say this, and I don't want to sound like I'm going to date myself, Bob Newhart, but you can't be so insecure that every, or so precarious or so fragile that every yes or no is going to determine how you feel you did. And all there is, Scott, is belief, not just for the speaker, but for the meeting professional who's made that choice. They got to believe it. They got to feel it. They got to vet. They got to do their work and then trust that choice. And, that's where I come in. That's where you come in. That's where, we're guiding and we're the Sherpas, if you will. I didn't want to call you a dirty word, so I'll call you a Sherpa.
Sherpa's good. That's
Sherpa works for now.
Sherpa works, and I just met someone who was Nepalese just the other day. A good friend of mine, Happy from Nepal, where there's a lot of Sherpas. But sidebar? But what you were saying, I think, is very valid. That we need to have trust in what we're doing, and the meeting professional needs to have trust. I'm actually surprised, to be honest with you, that there is so much trust. Like I would feel like, oh, well, what is he going to say? I've been doing this a long time. Yeah. Maybe once did I go over what I'm going to do that day. They just, I guess maybe because of what they've seen or what they've heard, but I'm actually surprised, especially with humor, that they don't seem uptight. They just know I'm going to do the right job. And that's rewarding as well.
Right. That is. And it's freeing, it's like you feel unconstrained, to be able to deliver. That's awesome.
And I was able to make it through the last, 5 years or 6 years where things were a little bit more tense on, what you can say, what you can't say. And I'm proud to say that I've never crossed the line. I've never had anyone come up to me and go, you can't say that, or you shouldn't have said that. I know where the line is. I'll go very, very close. Maybe toe a little bit on the line, but I'll never go over the line. And I never have. And if you're really good at what you're doing here in this sort of corporate or association model, you will sacrifice a laugh because you know it could maybe offend someone or it could be crossing a line.
Totally. But
And
you that's the choice you have to make, and I think that that's the responsible and smart thing, and that's what serves not only the buyer or the client, but the audience in the long run, for sure.
absolutely.
We're going to land this plane here. I could talk with you forever. We're going to do a little bit of wordplay in the world of quantum and energy and life lessons and tongue in cheek and not tongue in cheek. So finish this sentence. More business leaders would succeed if they stopped trying blank and started learning to blank.
All right, give me that sentence one more time, and I'll fill it in as we go.
More business leaders
Mhm.
would succeed if they stopped trying to
Overthink what they need to do.
and start learning to.
Just be in the moment and be genuine.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now have a third book being published. There's your title. Thank you very much. Standing ovation for Mr. Scott Bloom.
Thank you,
Really,
Seth.
you're welcome. Thank you. Listen, we're recording in a week where we're both busy, but I just appreciate you carving out some time for us and our audience, who I know got so much out of this conversation, and I have, and it's been great to have you here and host you, and just appreciate your generosity of spirit.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure being on the podcast, and I don't always get to be a guest, so it's always fun to do someone's podcast, and I love what you're doing here with this podcast.
Well, thanks. Our idea is sit back and just let me do the driving, but make sure you have your seatbelt on.
Buckled up.
And to our viewers, our subscribers, once again, just thanks so much for continuing to come back for this great content. We're going to have all of Scott's information, his speaking information, descriptions, videos. You can learn all about him, his book, and the next one coming out, and how to get in touch with us and explore it, how we can bring Scott to one of your events. So until then, we'll see you next time.